Yo, what's going on, everybody? Legit hustle back in the building, man. What's going on? All right, so y'all know I'm new to this live streaming thing. Yesterday I was supposed to do this broadcast, and it didn't quite go as planned. I did a whole, I did a whole hour and 15 minutes, yo. And when I went back to watch the replay of it, just to see how everything turned out, for an hour and 15 minutes, I ain't had no audio. So I'm getting it together, man. So I decided we'll redo it today and see who pull up. But I think right now the main thing for me is just figuring out how to make all these different systems work together when I'm going live so that I don't have these type of hang-ups and whatnot. So yeah, man. But anyway, welcome to the first installment of Legit Motivation. And I want to do this as a way to kind of, at the end of the week, going into your new work week, your new business week, if you have the weekends off especially, I want to kind of provide something that would encourage people and motivate people to get them a fresh start for the upcoming week. So I decided to do some motivational type of content. This particular live is going to be about change and the need to embrace change and why it's important that we embrace change. But before we get started, let's go and rock out, man. It's Saturday. Shabbat Shalom, FBA. Shout out to all my people. You know, I don't care who you are, where you from. You're welcome to pull up, but y'all know what it is, man. We about our people too. So before we get started, man, we're going to rock out a little bit. I'm going to play a couple of my songs on this broadcast. And I think to start it off, we're going to start it off with the part 2 of the theme song for the channel. Now, for those of y'all who were around when I first started Legit Hustle back in 2024, I think it was, beginning of 2024. I said no data. But yeah, when I first started the channel, you know, I had just started really recording my music, and I did a theme song for the channel called Tales of a Hustler. Well, this is part 2 to Tales of a Hustler, and we're gonna kick the motivational show off with some music, man. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna keep it funky, and we're gonna have some fun. So with that being said, let's set the mood right, man. Let's do it.
Why are you so antisocial? Because I'm trying to get it. Why are you staying on the basketball court so much? Because I'm trying to get it. Why are you out there practicing in the hot sun when ain't nobody else out there? Because I'm trying to get it.
Storm.
Hey yo, you ever had to punch a clock up at sunrise, getting to it, keep the kitchen stocked? Like Dr. King had a dream, yeah, you got one too. And that's do what you gotta do to stay off the block. Cause you ain't got to fucking know to be standing in the cold, looking up and down the streets, running from the cops. You got another little baby on the way any day, ducking strays ain't the play, cause you got ops. Plus when you sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you can't even sleep, cause you hardwired to run your numbers up. Feels like bad luck. Be on your heels 24/7 trying to keep you stuck. Quitting this ain't an option, cause them little babies watching, and you can't stand to let them see they daddy in the dirt. So for better or for worse, or the day you see a hearse, whichever come first, it ain't no question, you gon' make it work. Yeah, a different tale, same hustle. Clench your fist if you will, pushing back against the struggle. It's game time. Going back's not an option, so you take it and you talk it till you popping like a bubble. Stay on your grind. To all the soldiers in the field and my sisters, staying true, stay away from them pills. Keep a bag on your mind, so never mind what they saying. You hustling, they playing. You gotta go get yours. I'm out here getting mine. Only in your early 20s, and 2 times a mama. Still a lady, raising babies, staying out the drama. But every time you turn around, there's some hoes talking down. You say moving presidential, like your name Obama. Ain't trying to be Michelle, don't wanna see a sale, but you can and will. Out your respect, mama. Don't plead until you honor, but if they trip, it's trauma. Get they ass some karma, sit back and blow some ganja. But they ain't worth it, baby. Them bitches steady hating. While you been paper chasing, girl, you finally made it. Yeah, you doing good. Who's all about the hood? Saw the opportunity, took it with no hesitation. pills. Keep a bag on your mind. So never mind what they saying. You hustling, they playing. You gotta go get yours. I'm out here getting mine. Different tale, same hustle, cinch your fist. If you with it, pushing back against the struggle. Game time. And going back is not an option, so you take it and you talk it till you pop it like a bubble. Stay on your grind. To all the soldiers in the field and my sisters staying real. Stay away from them pills. Keep a bag on your mind. Never mind what they saying. You hustling, they playing. You gotta go get yours. I'm out here getting mine.
Cut my mic back on and cut these speakers off so I can't hear myself. Give me 1 second. All right. So I want to welcome everybody to the first episode of Legit Motivation. As I said in the intro, I really want to do something to give people some positive encouragement and going into the weekend, preparing to start your new work week off on a positive note. And so that's where I came up with the idea to start doing, a little bit of motivational type of content too. And I want to be positive on Legit Hustle, and I don't mean positive in just talking about business and making money and success and AI and all that stuff. I mean positive and just some real talk, you know what I'm saying? Some real human to human stuff. So I'm going to share some of my personal experiences in these broadcasts. Give you guys a little bit of a idea about who I am and where I come from and what some of my experiences are in these topics that I'm going to be discussing. So with that being said, let's jump into it. So the title is To Change is to Live. So live to change. So begin your transformation today. Oh, that's the wrong slide. Y'all give me 1 second. Let me jump back to the beginning. Yeah, there we go. That's the intro. To change is to live, so live to change. All right, the first thing that we got to acknowledge about change itself is that change is inevitable, right? Change is something that is a part of life. Everything changes. Well, why does everything change? Because change is growth, right? There's nothing that advances that doesn't grow, and there's nothing that grows that doesn't advance. And growth and advancement are all forms of change, right? So change doesn't necessarily mean you become a whole new person or that you got to try to be somebody that you're not. Your change comes from your growth. Your change comes from your advancement. But usually when we're talking about changing and working on ourselves, we're going to run into resistance, right? You're going to run into some resistance when you start working on yourself. And that becomes the problem with change. Now, what is the source of that resistance? Well, to talk more about the source of resistance when it comes to change, I'm actually going to share a little bit of my personal story and some of the changes that I have had to accept, adapt to, grow into in my life. So we're going to look at a little bit of myself. I'm going to share some personal stuff. Don't y'all be laughing at me. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to show y'all some pictures of me at different phases in my life and talk about some of the changes that I had to go through. And hopefully some of my insights and my experiences will help you on your journey. So at age 14, I started off as a barber. In high school, I started cutting hair, and that became like my little side hustle in school. And that was at age 14. And I eventually ended up graduating from technical school and becoming a licensed master cosmetologist. And these are some of the pictures. These are pictures from a couple different photo shoots that I had. And now this isn't, of course, at me in high school level. This is me when I came back to being a cosmetologist after I had gotten married. And actually my wife is in one of the photos on the right, and she was actually pregnant with our twins at this photo shoot. All right, and the way I did this was I had some business partners of mine here that owned some clothing stores, and they were putting together a catalog, And so we kind of swapped the workout. I would find the models, bring them to the photo shoots. Sometimes I would style them at the photo shoot, and he'd shoot pictures of it, like the one on the left. They would end up becoming like pictures for my websites. They would be used in pictures for my business as pictures for my business cards, my flyers, and things like that. So in my professional career, this is what got me started, and from that career, I gleaned a lot about being a hustler. I gleaned a lot about what it takes to get out here and do it on your own. And this is just a look at that part of my life, that phase of my life. Now, after getting licensed and becoming a master cosmetologist, living in Atlanta, working in Atlanta, I ended up moving to Tennessee, where, naturally I wasn't licensed at. So I couldn't legally work as a cosmetologist in the state of Tennessee. But the funny thing about it is, I never really wanted to be a cosmetologist. I never really wanted to be a barber. That was never like on my agenda. Cutting hair was just like a side hustle, and it was something I liked to do in high school. I took my parents' advice and got licensed out of high school, and I fell in love with, be honest with you, the environment. Like, being around beautiful women all day. They pay you, they feed you, they took care of me. From a co-worker, sometimes I was like their brother, their little brother, sometimes their big brother. I had clients that showed me love. I fell in love with that environment. Well, by the time I was about 24, there was that profession wasn't really fulfilling certain things inside of me. And, I wasn't really into that mode anymore. I wanted to do something else. I was trying to find my path, right? As a professional, as a business owner, someone who always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was really trying to find my way. So I got into financial services. Shout out to all my people in Memphis. I actually went to school in Memphis at at a school called A+ Severe in Memphis, Tennessee. I think Mr. Severe's first name was Ted Severe or something like that. But he had a really good insurance school. I ended up getting licensed. I got into financial services. I did pretty well at that. This is a picture of me later on in life. At this point, I had moved back to Georgia, and again, I was married at this point. The picture on the left is me at the office, waiting to take some phone calls and make some money at the office that I had at the time. And the picture on the right is when I flew down to Vero Beach, Florida, to sign some contracts with an insurance company, an agency out of Vero Beach. So at this time, I had my own insurance agency. I was working for myself. I was looking to recruit other agents and train people on how to make good money in life and health insurance. And I was also working to become a stockbroker at the time. And I enjoyed it. I really like financial services. I like sales. I like talking to people. I like dealing with people. And that was a very good time in my life. And I'll tell you a little bit later about some of the changes that I had to embrace. But right now, what I'm really trying to do is just show you some of the professional changes that I had to make, or that I made over the course of my personal life leading up to today. Now, fast forward from that, from owning my own insurance agency, my wife, we had 5 children. Well, before my fifth child was born, I actually became a truck driver. And again, I'll tell you a little bit about the transition in the between time from the insurance agency to the truck driver, and a little bit about what was going on. I'm not going to get into them details too much, but I became a truck driver at 37. Now, if you believe me when I say I didn't really want to be a barber and hairstylist, I definitely had no intention of ever being a truck driver. You get what I'm saying? Like, that was nowhere on my radar growing up. That was nowhere on my radar when I was kind of mapping my path out as a hustler, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. Being a truck driver was nowhere on my radar. But at 37, with a wife and 4 and 5 children later on, with my wife at the time, I was doing what I had to do to take care of my family. So I jumped on the road. It was very hard on me, but I tried to keep a hold of that entrepreneurial vision that I had for myself. So if you're familiar with the layout of the cabin of a semi truck, the picture on the left, you know, right behind me, that little curtaining thing is my bunk and where I slept at. I also had a little plug-in skillet and whatnot back there, so I would cook up my meals on the road, chill back there in my off time. But what I also did was I would build websites in the back of my truck while I was on the road, right? And again, that was my way of holding on to the entrepreneurial side of myself, not wanting to give up on that vision of who I wanted to be or who I was trying to be in my life, because being a truck driver was nowhere in my plans, right? So I find myself in this situation. I'm doing what I got to do in order to take care of my family. But in a way, I did not want to let go of or ever give up on my entrepreneurial vision, my vision for myself, you know, and being independent. And of course, that's a picture of me and who was my wife at the time, and our 4 children prior to our youngest son being born. And this is right around the time that I got on the road and started driving trucks. Also during this time, I want to point out something. I was miserable. I was so unhappy inside. I had gotten up, as you can see from the pictures, you know, I had gained weight. I wasn't exactly, let me go back. I wasn't exactly happy with the way I looked. I've always been a kind of slim, athletic built kind of dude. At that point in my life, I was up to like, I think at my heaviest, I was like 260. And I was miserable inside. I didn't recognize myself anymore when I looked in the mirror. And I was so far away from where I was trying to be that I was just very unhappy with myself inside. And that comes with change sometimes. Again, before we got into my personal journey, the other slide talked about the resistance that comes with change, right? And a lot of what I was going through inside was the resistance to the changes that I had to make in order to be a father and a husband. And it wasn't a good time for me, you know. And I don't really look back on that time of my life with too much fondness, you know, specifically in that career. But I just want to point out that from 14 to at this point, about age 37, 38, I had made 3 major career shifts. What I started out as thinking this is the beauty industry was gonna be my path to entrepreneurship. I had visions of having product lines and magazines and, you know, just all kind of stuff going on. And that didn't pan out. And then I got into financial services, and I was able to start an agency and help other people become insurance agents and things like that. And that felt good. But right here is where I'll interject a little bit about my personal life. Again, I'm not going to get into too many details. But during that time of being an insurance agent and owning my agency and becoming a truck driver, I ended up becoming a truck driver because I almost went to federal prison. I was dibbling and dabbling in places I shouldn't have been dibbling and dabbling. Suspected being under surveillance, but wasn't 100% sure that I was actually under surveillance or who I was under surveillance by. Come to find out, I was under surveillance by the federal government. And, you know, me and my homies that was involved with me, what we was doing, I narrowly escaped going to federal prison. And at that point, you know, having a family, having decisions, I had to make a choice. And that choice was, am I going to go down this path or am I going to go down this path? Which person am I going to be? And I didn't want to go down the street path. Been there, done that. at this point with a wife and children, especially, I wasn't trying to go down the street path. So I chose to do something different, something that I never planned on doing, something that I had no idea that I would ever be doing in my life. And that's how I ended up becoming a truck driver. And I never became a stockbroker. I was never able to actually get my securities licenses, because when you get certain charges and you have certain things on your background, they ain't messing with you in no type of financial services field. You get what I'm saying? So I shot myself in the foot with that career, killed that one with those charges. So I ended up becoming a truck driver, and that's how I got to this place. Now, like I mentioned before, I had been designing websites for a while. At that point, I was using some HTML, a little CSS. I never actually went to school for any of these things. For the most part, I'm totally self-taught. I'm in school now for data science, but back at this time, I didn't have any formal education in technology. I just liked it, and I was self-taught, so I spent a lot of time at libraries. I spent a lot of time on YouTube, especially in the early days. I actually started really designing websites about 2009 or 10-ish. So back then, social media was still very new. YouTube had been around for a couple years, but it wasn't the YouTube we know now, of course, if you remember that time. It wasn't a whole lot of these platforms where you could go and get skills and get trained at different things. So I was self-taught. I spent a lot of time at the library getting books, spent a lot of time Googling things, reading forums, information, figuring out how to solve this problem. I worked a lot with some content management systems like Joomla and WordPress. And that kind of, I think, whet my appetite with technology. I'd always been into technology. In high school, I was in a couple technology clubs. I was in the engineering club at one point in time. So I was always into tech, and that kind of whet my appetite for it. But the limitation was that with web design, I couldn't actually make anything that did something, right? It couldn't take someone's input. You couldn't click something and it do all this and do all that. You're very limited in what you can do with a static website. So I want to learn how to do things, right? But at the same time, I got a family now and blah, 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 blah. Well, 2019, September 2019, I turned 40 years old. And when I turned 40, I made a decision. And that decision was that I was going to be who I wanted to be. Me and my wife had just separated, and I found myself at a place where I could have looked at it as just all negative, but I looked at it as, hey man, this is your chance, bro. Like, this is your chance to really be who you want to be as a person, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. Some of those legal things were behind me. I didn't have that kind of pressure on me anymore. And so I made a choice. I decided to get into web development. And I started out developing my app, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐿. I started developing that technology on a program called UBot Studio, right? And I started working on 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐿. This is like the fall of 2021, because COVID was going on, and I literally couldn't drive my truck anymore. I had came home because of some personal things going on with my family, so I wasn't on the road. I wasn't really working. I just was able to live off what I had saved up, and then I was getting unemployment from the stimulus stuff, right? So I was living off of that, and I decided I'm gonna do it. So I started developing this platform, this app called 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐿 in 2021. This is I think it's a picture of me. All right, so that picture on the left, that's actually me at my desk in 2021 when I was working on this app, and really at the time my company was focused more on advertising and marketing because I really liked advertising and marketing. I kind of fell in love with marketing when I was a barber and a hairstylist because that was the hustle. You know, you had to get out, hand out business cards, flyers. You had to learn how to network with people. You had to learn how to go to different events and network with people. And I fell in love with the hustle and the grind. So around that time, my company was primarily positioned to be an ad agency. And I was working on the application as kind of an asset to go along with the revenue that I could generate from managing ad campaigns for people, and helping show others how to properly advertise and market their businesses online. And that I had to add this picture of my oldest son because I couldn't leave him out. That's my boy. That's my homie. That's my dog. That's me and my oldest son, Cameron. And like I said, you can tell on that picture. And look, right now I'm probably 165 pounds. On that picture, man, I was probably about 100 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I wasn't happy. Again, I wasn't happy with myself. So I didn't mean to put that picture of me and Cam right there, but it just happened to go right there. So yeah, that's me and my oldest son, Cameron. But yeah, around this time, I was working on my ad agency and my app, 𝐿GH&x. And that's the logo for the app, 𝐿GH&x. And around, like I said, a lot of changes going on around that time. I'm not gonna get into some details, but just to give you an idea of the type of changes, you know, I had legal things going on. I just buried my brother, my cousin. I lost a lot of people that were close to me during that time, like really, really close to me. And on top of all that, I'm going through these career changes. I'm trying to choose to be this guy versus being the guy that I could be, you know, or that I felt like sometimes that life was trying to push me in the direction of becoming. And then AI came along. So you're talking about some changes, right? Imagine this is when did AI really just like disrupt my whole life? This is probably like 2023, I think summer 2023. I had been hearing about this thing called ChatGPT, and I had been hearing talks about AI, but I didn't really know what the use of AI was or how AI would be being used, right? So 2023, I started looking into this thing, ChatGPT and AI. And when I tell you, it depressed the hell out of me because here I had spent, you got to think from when did I start 𝐿GH&x? I think I started 𝐿GH&x in 2020. Started working on that on YouBot, maybe like 2020, 2021. Here it is 2-3 years later, and this thing called AI came out. And when I tell you that everything that people was using AI for, especially on the business end, man, it pretty much made my app that I had been working on for those couple years obsolete. It literally took me back to square one almost. And that was like very, very, very disappointing. That was a big change because I had invested so much time into developing this app. I was working on this, dealing with loss, the loss of my marriage, the loss of family, loss of close friends, COVID. All this stuff has been going on, all these changes going on simultaneously. And then right when I start to feel like everything's kind of leveling out and I can start making progress again, AI came along and wiped all that out. Just I literally took me back to square one, to the drawing board with this app that I have been working on. But if you notice, I know you can't see the whole thing because of my little subtitle right there. But the truth about it is change usually comes in the form of some type of disruption in our life, right? But the truth of the matter is that disruption actually creates opportunities for us, and it's largely about our mindset, our view of the changes, right? So I had to make another very important decision, and that was to decide to not look at AI as the end of my app development or my company that I was trying to build. I had to look at AI as an opportunity. Like, how do I incorporate this disruption into what I'm already doing without losing the central focus of what it is that I'm actually trying to do, right? And I had to learn to see opportunities in the changes, no matter how disruptive, no matter how unexpected. I had to find opportunities in it. Now, that brings us up to today. That's pretty much where I am today. Now, my company focuses on AI and automation. I still have the insurgent thing going on one side, but now it all incorporates AI and automation into it. But that took months of reviewing my plan, going over the model, reviewing the work, the flows and the sequences and all these things that I had developed for this app. I had to kind of learn how to incorporate AI into it. What can AI do here and what can't AI do? And it was uncomfortable, y'all, because change is uncomfortable. And going back to resistance, going back to the story I was telling about my personal life, you cannot expect to be comfortable during a period of change. And that's where the resistance comes in, right? Because of the discomfort, because of the disruption that it brings. But it's like shedding an old skin. Anybody who knows me, especially since I've been young, knows I love snakes. I've had quite a few snakes over my lifetime. They're one of my favorite animals, and I love them as pets. So one thing about a snake, though, is that when a snake gets ready to shed its skin, as a person who deals with snakes, you know that if you're going to get bit, 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to be during this time. Yeah, you get bit during feeding sometimes, but that's usually the snake missing the target or, being a little aggressive on the feeding. But when they're shedding, they're so uncomfortable. They've got a scale over their eye that has gone milky and blue. They can't see very well. They're irritable. They're probably not going to eat a whole lot right before they shed. But if that snake doesn't go through that discomfort, it literally won't grow. That snake has to go through that period of uncomfort, of irritability, of change, in order to continue to grow. And the same is true of us. When we're going through periods of change, and we're going through those disruptions in life, it is necessary. It is a necessary thing to understand and learn how to be uncomfortable. Because in our place of comfort, in that comfort zone, we don't grow. We don't advance much. So when you're really growing, I was going to say when life is forcing you to grow, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's our decisions that, spur that growth. But doing any type of change or growth, you should expect to be uncomfortable. If you're comfortable, you're probably not growing very much. You're probably not advancing very much, because change and growth is uncomfortable. But it's a very necessary discomfort. Going back to the internal conflict that you feel, I can assure you, I know from personal experience, it's the battle between who you are and who you could become, right? Who you are, you're comfortable with. You know that person, you know what that person is capable of. It's like having a job. You know that if you work 40 hours a week or however much you work, whatever your pay rate is, if I do this, I'm going to do that. I'm going to receive that. Well, as an entrepreneur, or business owner, or self-employed person, that is not how it works. You're not guaranteed to receive anything. for everything that you do, right? So it's a constant state of discomfort sometimes when you work for yourself. That internal conflict is the discomfort. It's the battle between who you could be and who you are. And that is a very, 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 very intense conflict because it's all going on inside of you. There were times in those different phases of change that I talked about earlier in my professional life, in my personal life. There were times during that period that people who would see me, you would never know that I felt the way I did inside because you couldn't see it. It was internal. You know, my displeasure with myself, my disappointment with myself and some of the choices I made, some of the people I chose to trust, things like that. Not to mention, you know, I went through some very tumultuous things with my wife. All of that was eating me alive inside. All of that was things that I was dealing with inside. So when you're going through periods of change, when you're dealing with disruptions, brace yourself because a lot of the conflict, a lot of the resistance that you feel that you get during those periods, it's going to come from inside of you. Because even though you may see the change as being external, truth of the matter is the change is actually internal. And that's where you're going to feel the conflict at. Now, one of the main reasons why it's important to always be open and be willing to change, to grow and advance, is because the only things that don't grow are dead. To become stagnant in life is the equivalent of being dead. If you've ever been locked up in county jail or prison for any substantial amount of time, you know that that is like being dead, right? Because when you're locked up, when you go behind that wall, when you go into that jail cell, for the most part, your life, your external life, the things that you have going on, they come to a cease. They come to a stop and you become stagnant. Your life stops at that moment that you go into that situation, right? It pauses and it doesn't resume until you get out. And then if you get out, there's no guarantee you won't even be able to pick it back up where you left it at, because time has continued to move forward for the rest of the world except for you, right? So to become stagnant at any point in our lives is equivalent to death. Think about your life like a road. Let's call that road Martin Luther King Boulevard. If I start at the beginning of Martin Luther King Boulevard and walk all the way to the end of Martin Luther King Boulevard, aka my life and the end of my life, you're not going to be the same person at the end of that walk that you were when you started that walk, right? One thing, you're going to be more tired than you was. You wasn't that tired when you first started the walk. By the time you get to the end of Martin Luther King, though, you're more tired, so you're different in that way. You may be more stronger. Your legs had to walk that whole distance, so you built up some muscle in your legs from that walk, right? On that walk, you've probably had some moments of clarity. You may have met some different people along the way. All of those are changes that happen to us over the course of our life, over the course of our walk, if you will, down Martin Luther King Boulevard. But if you were to stop at any point along that walk, along that street, if you were to just stop and say, pick some plums, then you had become stagnant and you're not advancing toward the end of Martin Luther King Boulevard. You're just in that point, right? Now that's an analogy I'm trying to give to illustrate life and the need to progress and move along in life and during life. But the truth of the matter is, if we are overly resistant to change, if we're not willing to change and grow, it is the same thing as becoming stagnant, which is the same thing as being dead, right? The only things that do not grow are dead things. Everything living grows. Everything living advances in some form, shape, form, or another. To not do that is literally death. The only reason you can't do that and be alive is not even biologically. We call that aging. Aging is change. Maturing is change. If at any point in your life you or I stop aging, we stop maturing, it's because we're dead. Right? Well, when it comes to embracing change and learning how to deal with change and learning how to be uncomfortable and how to make the best out of those situations, we have to embrace it, because the failure to embrace that change is condemning us to stagnation. It's condemning us to a death. And again, the only thing that don't change is dead things. To live, to be alive, requires constant evolution, we'll say. But evolution is only change. Evolution is adaptation. Evolution is growth. And I'm not talking about, that bullshit of you went from a monkey to a human. I'm talking about as a person, in your character, in your professionalism. Going back to my professional career, I went through 4 major professional shifts in my life. Each one was very, very different from the other. I think from being a barber to an insurance agent and owning an insurance agency. Going from that to being a truck driver. Those are totally different industries. Like, they really ain't got nothing to do with each other so much. You know what I'm saying? But those are major shifts. Those are major changes professionally. And at a point, I'll be honest with you, that's where a lot of my conflict came from, because I really felt like I had failed. Those shifts were so major. They were so, like, going from a barber to an insurance agent. That's not really a natural progression in your mind that you would think, a person who's in this career advancement means now you're an insurance agent. There's no connection there, right? There's no correlation between those industries. Those disruptions in my life, in my family life, they were so major. They were major disruptions. But I can assure you, and I mean this with all honesty, at the point that you're seeing this video, if you're watching it live, if you are catching this on a replay, no matter when you see this video, on today, August 23rd, 2025, you are seeing the product of all those changes. You're seeing the product of all those evolutions, of all those adaptations. I would not be the legit hustle today that you're meeting in 2025 had I not gone through those changes, had I not found a way to embrace those changes, right? Because the only thing that doesn't change are dead things. Another problem is when we refuse to change, when we refuse to grow, we don't ever address our traumas. You don't give yourself an opportunity to overcome unhealed traumas. And everybody has trauma in their life, right? It doesn't matter what your background is. Everybody's trauma isn't child abuse. Everybody's trauma isn't poverty. Everybody's trauma isn't growing up in a single parent household. Everybody's trauma isn't losing their parents at a young age. No, but everybody goes through traumatic experiences in their life. If you don't learn to embrace the change that comes with any type of disruption in your life, the only thing that you can logically expect to happen is for that trauma to rear its ugly head every time you turn around, and it's going to sabotage every relationship that you have. It doesn't matter if it's a romantic relationship. It doesn't matter if it's a business relationship. It doesn't matter if it's a family relationship. It doesn't matter. Trauma is going to sabotage every relationship in your life if you don't embrace the change, if you don't learn to adapt, if you don't embrace the growth. the advancement, those traumas, they don't go away. They just hide behind you like an evil shadow, right? And they have a way of rearing their head. A lot of problems that we have going on, especially in our community as FBA, quote unquote, black people, is that a lot of us go into relationships with unhealed traumas. You carry that trauma in it. We even talk about nowadays things like trauma bonding, right? And that's not just some catchy catchphrase. Trauma bonding is very real. You bring a person, two people together with unhealed traumas, and they find a connection in those traumatic experiences, right? And that's okay, because you might need that connection with a person. But trauma can't be the basis of your bond with another person, because trauma, by its very nature, is disruptive and chaotic and damaging. Think about it. You get shot 77 times and they take you to the trauma unit, the trauma ward. Every one of those 77 impacts was a trauma upon your body. Well, some of the things that we go through in life has the same impact on us psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. They're traumatic. If you don't learn to embrace the changes that come with life, none of those traumas have any chance of being healed, and all 77 of those wounds are just going to continue to destroy your life, right? So one of the things about, or one of the reasons that you need to embrace change and look forward to change, is because the ability to grow and the ability to change is equivalent to the ability to heal trauma, past traumas, to grow past that, right? So if you want healthy relationships, if you want healthy business relationships, if you want healthy personal relationships, you have to be willing to change. You have to embrace the change as it comes. You have to see opportunities within those changes. Otherwise, you're going to bring that trauma into all your future relationships. Another thing, Legit Hustle, this is about, my channel is for hustlers. My channel is for people that work for themselves. Hopefully you're doing stuff legally. I'm not here to encourage anything illegal. That's why it's Legit Hustle. This is for the people who have that drive, that go get it in them, but choose consciously to do it the right way. I've chose to do it the right and wrong way over the course of 46 years. I'll be 46 in a couple weeks. I've made good choices and I've made bad choices, right? But at Legit Hustle, this is for the people who are out here trying to get it the right way. And we're choosing to do things the right way. We've been down that ignorant path, and that path of self-destruction, and we're not on that no more. And I'd be remiss, I'd be very ignorant if I came online and at any point in time encouraged my brothers and sisters, or any human, anybody that belongs to the human family, to go down that reckless path. So that's not what I'm about at Legit Hustle. But at Legit Hustle, I am 157% dedicated to the fight against poverty, because a lot of the crime, a lot of the negative traumas that we experience, our children are going to experience, a lot of times come from that word right there, poverty. Poverty is a terrible thing. But worse than being in poverty is being stuck in poverty. And just because you don't have a lot of money, just because you don't make a lot of money, that doesn't necessarily leave you in poverty. It doesn't even really mean you might not even really be in poverty, because more than anything, poverty is a mindset. One of the biggest keys to not being trapped in a situation of poverty, if we are dealing with those types of things, is you can never lose your hope. If you lose your hope for being able to change your circumstances, if you lose your hope in your ability to do better, right, then you are going to be stuck in that situation. Remember earlier when I talked about how I was designing websites and whatnot in the back of my trucks? That was largely what it was about. I did not want to become hopeless. I didn't want to lose my hope. Yes, being this entrepreneur and running this successful company and developing this and being creative and da-da-da-da-da, it seemed gone, way down the road. But I didn't want to lose hope that I could still get there. Even though every year that I got older and had more children and circumstances in life kept happening, yeah, it seemed further away, but I never wanted to give up my hope, right? So for any of you guys that see this today, tomorrow, next year, 50 years from now, whenever you come across this video, don't ever give up your hope. Don't ever lose hope, right? And I don't want that to be some blanket statement. I'm gonna give you a very simple way to never lose hope. You know how you never lose hope? You choose not to ever give up. Having hope is just a choice. Being hopeless is a choice as well. At any point in time, that's not to say that sometimes we don't find ourselves in situations and circumstances that don't look the best, right? If you just got sentenced to a life sentence, it ain't looking the best. But that doesn't mean you should give up hope, because there's a way that you can still be the best version of yourself despite those circumstances. I'll use an example of somebody like 𝐾𝐿 Williams, right? Rest in peace, 𝐾𝐿. I think 𝐾𝐿, and even people like shout out and respect to Larry Hoover. Those were people who were facing those type of challenges, man. You've been locked in a cage for 50, 60 years, however long that shit was. You know, sometimes if a person on the outside were to come to somebody in that situation, be like, man, don't give up hope, you know, it would be understandable if that sounded like some bullshit. Just being real. It's totally understandable if that sounds like bullshit. But those two men are perfect examples of men who, despite those circumstances of literally being in a cage longer, or having to face being in a cage longer than they were ever on the streets as free people. And what did 𝐾𝐿 do? 𝐾𝐿 decided, hey man, I'm going to change. Yeah, I ain't going to keep encouraging the brothers and sisters to get out here on this gang banging thing and keep destroying themselves. And what he do? He wrote books from behind the wall. And I'm going to put it out there, man. Y'all dead ass wrong, bro. The government, y'all dead wrong, man. Y'all executed that brother, man. And if prison is supposed to be about rehabilitation, I just don't understand, you know, how something like that happens. But rest in peace, 𝐾𝐿 Williams, man. But the lesson is don't ever be hopeless. See, in his circumstances, 𝐾𝐿, Larry Hoover, some of you all have been in those circumstances. I've been in those circumstances. Hopelessness was an option. And you may have dealt with it at times. There were nights in jail cells, you cry yourself to sleep, blah, 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 a whole nine. We understand we're going to be real about this shit over here, man. It ain't all easy, it ain't all good. No matter how gangster you are, don't matter how tough you are, at the end of the day, sometimes some circumstances can and they will break you. Even if you got to do it, on your bunk with your sheet over your goddamn head, so you trying to, pretend like your bunkmate don't know you're down there crying, but your ass crying, nigga. You know what I'm saying? So there are circumstances in life where hopelessness seems like a legitimate option. But those two brothers that I just mentioned, 𝐾𝐿 Williams and Larry Hoover, they made choices, man. They made choices that even in those circumstances, they decided, nah, I'm not gonna let this be the end of my story. Even if they execute me, the state decides to execute me like they did with 𝐾𝐿, I'm not gonna let that be the end of my story. He chose. So whether it's poverty, whether it's family issues, whether it's just internal conflict, at the end of the day, avoiding hopelessness is a choice. It's simply a choice, not an easy choice. I'm not saying it's an easy choice all the time, but it's a simple choice. You just have to choose. And if you don't ever want to be stuck in poverty, if you don't ever want to be caught in that trap that takes so many of us down in life, then you have to choose not to be. Choose what? You can choose to embrace change. You can choose to look for opportunities to change. Isn't the definition, I believe, of insanity to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? I think that's like the literal definition of insanity. Well, in order to not be true of someone, what do they have to do? They have to make a change. You have to change how you do things. You might have to change what you expect. Sometimes you don't change what you're doing. Sometimes you just change what your expectations are from it. You might need to raise or lower them. Sometimes you have to change who you think you're going to accomplish those things with. The people you start off in your business venture with, in your marriage with, in your life with, they're not necessarily the people that you're going to end it with. You see what I'm saying? So doing those changes, if you want to not see the same results, then change is the key to not be out here behaving insanely. At some point, you have to make the decision. Either you're going to change or you're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. And that is insanity. And so one of the things that you can do is you can embrace change. I don't know what happened to my picture right there, but there was a picture there. So embrace the change. Don't fear change. Don't run from it. Don't try to duck it. Embrace change. Because on the other side of change is your greatest opportunities. It's your moment to shine. It's the sunlight. It's what you've been looking for. Seek to be discomfortable or uncomfortable. Seek discomfort. All right? Going back to some we talked about earlier, very little growth happens from a place of comfort. Very little growth happens from a place of feeling like everything is good. Right? A bird. When a bird gets ready to fly, and we all know birds for flying, even though there are some birds that don't fly, but typically when you think of a bird, you think of something that flies. They don't come out the egg flying. You know what I'm saying? At some point, they got to get up on the edge of that nest, and whether they jump or whether their parents push them, they got to stop practicing flapping their wings, and they got to go for it. You think that's comfortable? But if that bird never does that, is it a bird? It's going to die in that nest because the parent or something else going to get it, because the parents ain't going to let it live there forever. So in order for a bird to be a bird, they got to be willing to change. They don't even be looking the same. When a bird come out of the egg, like usually like a little fluffy piece of cotton or something, you know, then 6-7 months, a year later, you got this big, beautiful golden eagle that can soar way up there at the top of the clouds. But it would have never become that eagle if at some point it didn't get on the edge of that nest, try those wings out and go for it. And that's uncomfortable, right? So when you're talking about embracing change and learning how to benefit and prosper and grow, you have to be okay with being uncomfortable. And when you're really trying to advance and you're really trying to grow to this place, you have to seek out the discomfort. Another thing is, and out of everything that I've said, this is the part that I was looking forward to the most, because hopefully here I can tie in all the stories about my life that I shared with you, some of the things that were going on in my personal life. Today, when you see this video, when you hear this part of this video, I want you to remember this. In the midst of all those changes, it didn't feel like a process. It was only on the other side, looking back in hindsight, as they say, it was only at that point that I began to realize that all of those changes, and even the losses, they were part of my process. They were my process. All right? Again, I wouldn't be legit hustle on YouTube in 2025 if I had never been Mike B the Barber in 2008. If I had never been Don Miguel Hair Care in 2010-12. If I had never been DME Financial, which was my insurance agency. If I had never been DME Financial, I wouldn't be legit hustle today. And the same is true for you. The same is true for your process. It's challenging, yes. It's uncomfortable. Yes. It's disruptive. Yes. Some of these changes are totally unforeseen. You couldn't have saw them coming if you could read the future. Yes, that happens. But at the end of the day, hopefully you'll find out, just like I did, that you get to this place where you can embrace and appreciate the fact that they were all part of the process, you know. And a funny thing happens at that part where you start to learn to trust the process. One of the things that I've come to realize is that, you ever heard the saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same? I understand that saying now. Because with all of those changes and all those things I had to go through in my particular process, you know what I really found out? And I'm saying this today, right now, 2025, at almost basically 46 years old. All I really was doing was becoming myself. That's all I was doing. I was only becoming myself. Hopefully a better version of myself. And that's one of the things that you find out when you get to that place where you trust the process, is you'll realize, man, I really ain't a different person, but I'm a better version of that person, most definitely. You get what I'm saying? So trust the process, embrace change, learn to seek out being uncomfortable, and realize that those changes are all a part of your process. Not my process, not this person's process, not that person's process. Those changes are a part of your process. And that is a beautiful thing. That is a huge moment of clarity. I'll give you a perfect example. I have never really been big on content creation, even though working with tech, yes, the internet is important. Yes, I have to be on a computer. Yes, I have to do this and I have to do that. But it don't really require content creation. I don't have to make content to do those things, right? But in order to grow my business and grow my company in this era that we live in, content creation is a huge factor. And for anybody in business, it's kind of one of those things that you can't ignore anymore at this point, because social media apps like YouTube, X, Facebook, IG, whatever platform, this is where the people are, right? And in business, you have to go where the people are if you want to grow. So I got to this place in my process where I had to, like, seriously take serious being a content creator, becoming a content creator, getting on here, talking freely about my life and sharing things with myself, with others about myself as a person. That on the business side, you ain't got to know all this stuff about my personal life in order for me to build an app for you, right? If you need some stuff automated with your company, you don't have to know any of these things about my life for me to do that. There's no need in order for me to perform those services and those produce those products for somebody. There's no need for me to tell you about my life's experience or get up here, talk for an hour some change and blabber on about random shit. There's really no need to do that in order to perform that. But as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a hustler, and I use hustler with the utmost respect. I do not mean a con man. All right, it's not necessarily a hustler. In my mind, in my heart, when you're a hustler, you're a go-getter. That can be legal or illegal. A hustler gonna go get it. They're not gonna sit back and wait for it to come to them. And that's what I salute, being a go-getter, right? So in this era that we live in, if you're a hustler, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a real go-getter, you gotta go where the people are at in order to grow, continue to grow and scale your business, or reach your goals, live your dreams, whatever you're trying to do. This is a part of my process still. I mess up sometimes. Like I said, I did a whole video. I literally went through this whole presentation yesterday for an hour and some change, and only found out that for an hour and some change, no one could have heard anything I said if they watched the video, because I didn't have my audio settings correct. Live streaming is new to me. Technology isn't new to me, but live streaming is new to me. Making sure my mic working, making sure that I know when to cut my sound on so I can hear, if somebody talk to me, if I'm playing some music or something like that. Just figuring out the settings. These are all part of my process. I'm still in my process. The difference is at this point right now, you all are witnessing it. See, those other processes, parts of the process you didn't see, you didn't know me. There was no legit hustle on YouTube, not me. There might have been some other channels called that, but it wasn't me. And so that's part of the process. The process is ongoing. This is a new part of my process. I was very resistant to doing live streaming. I don't really care for social media. If anybody know me, I'm not very active on social media. You know what I mean? I'm just not into it. So for me to get up here and just talk to random people and strangers about my life and stuff like that, that ain't really me. You know what I mean? But if I'm gonna really be the hustler that I intend to be, that I claim to be, if I'm really gonna be the entrepreneur that I want my children to see, so that they know that, hey, no matter where you come from, no matter what challenges you come up against, there's still a way for you to find out how to be that person that you're striving to be, who is just yourself. At the end of the day, you're going to realize that the process is about you being you, just the best version of you. If I'm going to be true to that for my children to look at as an example, for the people who may come along and follow and subscribe to YouTube, to a legit hustle in the future, if I'm going to be authentic, if I'm going to be real about that, then I got to continue to embrace my process and the changes. And so here I am, fumbling through live streams, recording live streams with no audio, you know what I'm saying? Things like that. But now, as opposed to it making me feel hopeless or depressing me or getting me down, I laughed. I cussed a whole bunch yesterday after I realized it had no audio. But I laughed at the end of the night because it was kind of comical. But getting to a place in my life where I've learned to trust the process, where I've learned to embrace the fact that the joy isn't in the finish line. The joy isn't in the money at the end of the day. The joy isn't in the big paycheck. They can give you some joy. But the real joy is when you look at yourself throughout this process and you can look back and you can be like, man, I made it through that, man. Some people didn't make it. Some people I love and care about, they didn't make it through that phase. Some of the people that in my life, I never imagined living my life without them right here by my side for every step of this. You know what I'm saying? Especially my brother. I never in a million years, I had no concept of ever living life without my brother, man. You know what I'm saying? But here I am today in 2025, and he's not physically here with me, but he always with me. You know what I'm saying? And I had to learn to see the glimmer, the shine, the joy, the beauty. Not in the destination, in the process, just in getting to this place that y'all meet me at with the audio issues and not knowing how to live stream and all this, and probably saying goofy shit on, camera. I got to learn how to do that, and be authentic to me, be legit hustle, be Mike at the end of the day. And it's going to be the same for you. When you start to learn to embrace change, when you start looking forward to the discomfort, right? Like a boxer. You don't feel like no boxer until you either hitting somebody or getting hit. Then you feel like a boxer. You don't feel like a boxer sitting at home watching a boxer, even if you're a boxer. You won't feel like a boxer till it's time to get in that ring and do your 1-2. You know what I mean? You was a rapper. You ain't a rapper till you on the mic rapping, bro. Whether it's in the studio or the live show. And that's where that side of you comes alive at, and you can get to start. People can start to see you as the rapper. They know Tank Davis as the boxer, not because they be at home with him and he be talking about boxing. Nah, they see him in the ring, you know, getting it in. So now you know he's a boxer, right? It's going to be the same for you. It's going to be the same for me. You know, at the end of the day, the joy is in the process. And the process is what makes you who you are and whatever it is that you are known for or will be known for. So trust the process. And again, it's your choice. You can change and live, or you cannot change and you can live in stagnation. You can live in death. You can deal with the traps that come along from refusing to grow, whether it's broken relationships, poverty, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, the choice is yours, you know. So again, to change is to live. So my encouragement to everybody out there is learn how to live to change. And I ain't going to keep it too long. We're going to kind of probably end that part of the presentation right there. I've been on here an hour and some change already. And I'm getting more comfortable with the live streaming thing, man. I hope whenever you see this, please subscribe, comment, like the video if you so choose to. But, you know, check me out. Come through and kick it with me sometimes. I guess maybe, you know, things happen for a reason. So maybe Saturday is the day that I should do my motivational thing. I was planning on doing it on Friday evenings. It didn't work out that way yesterday. But rather than get upset about it and be salty about it, I got up today and I said, hey, man, we're going to do this thing again today. And we're going to make sure it's right. You know, so I did what I had to. Hopefully everything works out right. I'm going to go back and watch the video. Hopefully all my audio came through and everything came through like I wanted it to. But at the end of the day, at the end of this live stream, I just want to say to you, don't ever give up hope. Don't ever give up on yourself. Make right choices. Make righteous choices. Make the best choice that you can in any given situation. And embrace the changes. And maybe one day, hopefully, you know, you'll know exactly what I mean when I say I look back now and I appreciate the process. And appreciate all the parts of the process. But I appreciate the process. And that's it, man. We're going to kill it like that. All right, so now that I've come to the end of it, again, I want the motivational stuff to be a little not so formal, not so straight to the point of business and making money. I want it to be a little more comfortable and a little more personal, a little more lighthearted. So we're going to leave out, we're going to close out with some more music, man. And I think an appropriate song for this would be Victory. Victory is a song that, give me 1 second, y'all. Let me make sure I get this set up right so we don't have the kind of problems that we had before. But Victory is a song that I wrote probably about a year ago now. Maybe a little over a year ago. No, it's just 2025, man. It's longer than that. No, maybe about a year and a half ago, the song Victory. And it's kind of like an anthem. You know, it's kind of the don't give up, be victorious, you know, you can win type of song. It's not a black people song. It's not a white people song. It's not any of those things. It's just a you can do it song. So with that being said, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for checking me out. Come back. Hopefully you enjoy this. If you like the content, subscribe, like, y'all know the thing. Drop me some comments, man. My channel ain't got no watchers right now, so I got time to respond to things personally. So, you know, drop me comments, man. I'll make sure I tap back in with people. Yeah, man. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate anybody that watches this and tunes in. So, legit out, man. Peace. Oh, y'all know my motto, man. Yeah. Hustle smarter, man.
Truth be told, every champion has felt it. Every president has felt it. Every king has felt it. Every lion has felt it. Every winner has felt it. Every soldier has felt it. Every victorious person has felt it. The urge to quit. Don't you give up on your dream. I don't care if you don't have the money, you don't have the help, and you don't have the family for it, and you don't have the background for it, and you don't have the friends for it. Don't you give up on your dream. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. Don't you do it.
In a world full of hunger, growing up on stomach pains, trying to make it over puddles and avoid the dirty stains of the streets where the rain drinks more than just your pain, and everything you have to lose is everything you have to gain. It's a battle for your mind, for your soul, for your time. Either stay down in the mud or jump back up, get on the grind, trying to catch up in a race when you started from behind. So removed from the lead that you can't even see the line. And the ones who say they love you, the same ones who hold their hand from extending you the kindness that you needed to withstand. The same ones walking blindly with contempt for fellow man. They don't lose a wink of sleep even when they leave you stranded. Fuck them all, just and tall, never mind if you fall. Every shoot, I forgot y'all couldn't even hear me. Alright, let's see if we can get this to work this time.
Truth be told,
There.
every champion has felt it. Every president has felt it. Every king has felt it. Every lion has felt it. Every winner has felt it. Every soldier has felt it. Every victorious person has felt it. The urge to quit. Don't you give up on your dream. I don't care if you don't have the money, you don't have the help, and you don't have the family for it, and you don't have the background for it, and you don't have the friends for it. Don't you give up on your dream. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. Don't you do it.
In a world full of hunger, growing up on stomach pains, trying to make it over puddles and avoid the dirty stains of the streets where the rain drinks more than just your pain, and everything you have to lose is everything you have to gain. It's a battle for your mind, for your soul, for your time. Either stay down in the mud or jump back up, get on the grind, trying to catch up in a race when you started from behind. So removed from the lead that you can't even see the line. And the ones who say they love you, the same ones who hold their hand from extending you the kindness that you needed to withstand. The same ones walking blindly with contempt for fellow man. They don't lose a wink of sleep even when they leave you stranded. Fuck them all, just and tall, never mind if you fall. Every hustler takes a L, without those you can't ball. It's a dirty, dirty dance, roll the dice, take that chance. Gotta tighten up your pants to stay a victim of circumstance. Opportunity comes at a glance, get to stepping like a band. After school, rap and dance, it don't matter, get your band to the sky up if it takes that to help you feel fly. Who am I to tell you not to when I'd rather see you try? It's a blackout to America, so I'm forced to make these choices. Ramen noodles or the bills while others riding in Rolls Royce. And then claim to be their leaders, whole time ignore their voices. Time to pay us what you owe us, they are just your first invoice. I suggest you pay up quickly, we are not that good at waiting. We have been too fucking patient, US government is Satan. And the victory was ours, you can quit the time wasting and installing, cause it's time Babylon should get to falling. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I think by now we all know who the enemy is, right? And we all see who the enemy is, right? You know what I'm saying? Alright, so it's not a person working next to your job. Probably ain't the person that lives down the street from you. Not to say it ain't some weirdos in all these places that need to get addressed, need to get dealt with. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just saying, man. We got a unique situation for my kid, when your kid, when they look back at our generation, what they gonna see? What they gonna see? A whole bunch of coulda, woulda, shoulda ass motherfuckers? Or they gonna look back and say, hey, I'm on my daddy's part of that generation. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I come from that. One more thing I've got to mention. If you listen, I hope you listening. We cannot ignore our kitchen, cause it's full of dirty dishes. We need mothers to be mothers, so our children can be children. We need fathers to be fathers, lead them right and give them wisdom, so our dreams can be reality, not just a bunch of wishes. Whether Muslim, Jew, or Christian, don't just talk it, you should live it. So I'm asking you, what would you do if on you this depended? For our dreams to be reality, not just a bunch of wishes. Figure it all.